Team Trump bracing for what's next after the ex-president's election interference scheme was blown wide open by a series of bombshell texts, emails, and eyewitness testimony from one of the lawyers involved in practically every last step of the plot to suppress negative stories about Donald Trump ahead of the 2016 election. To really understand why the so-called catch-and-kill scheme wasn't just about preventing negative press, it wasn't just something all celebrities do, as Lindsey Graham tried to spin it a few days ago, we'll get in our Wayback Machine and take a trip down memory lane. Back in the summer of 2016, in the weeks after Donald Trump clinched the Republican nomination, and there was a lot of attention being paid to what a lot of people around politics and around Trump refer to as Donald Trump's women problem, his sky-high disapproval ratings among female voters. Those ratings, those low approval ratings were fueled by Trump's own rhetoric and his sexist attacks against Ted Cruz's wife, a Republican candidate, Carly Fiorina, or his long history of crude and frankly vile remarks, not to mention his flagrantly misogynistic approach to his opponent, Hillary Clinton. And just look at how that showed up in the polls for him. 73% of women voters had a negative view of Donald Trump by mid-March of the election year. 64% of women voters in April of 2016 said they had a, quote, strongly unfavorable view of Trump. It's in the middle of all this that attorney Keith Davidson sends a text to an editor at the National Enquirer that says, quote, I have a blockbuster Trump story, to which National Enquirer editor Dylan Howard writes back, quote, talk first thing. I'll get you more than anyone for it. You know why. Now, Dylan Howard is referring to the fact that the National Enquirer was in this business of catching and killing stories for one Donald J. Trump. Court transcripts released late last night reveal that attorney Keith Davidson told the jury yesterday that his text about a, quote, blockbuster Trump story was, quote, sort of an entree or teaser to Dylan, and that he reached out to him because, quote, I knew that Dylan's boss, David Pecker, and Mr. Trump were longtime friends and had a former business relationship. And after a lot of back and forth, that deal closes in August of 2015, at which point Keith Davidson calls Michael Cohen. Here's what Davidson told the court, quote, I called him and let him know as a professional courtesy that the deal involving his client, Donald Trump, had closed. And of course that client was Donald Trump, right? And of course he was fully aware of everything that was happening because we already know he's on tape having the conversation about how the money gets moved around with Michael Cohen about paying off Karen McDougal in September 2016.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David, so that I'm going to do that right away. I've actually come up and I've spoken to Alan Weisselberg about how to set the whole thing up with funding.
It was, in fact, $150,000 that American media paid McDougal for her silence in a few articles for Byline, fitness articles. But at the same time, Keith Davidson's other client, Stormy Daniels, had a story to tell about Trump as well. So on June 30th, 2016, Dylan Howard, the lawyer for Stormy and McDougal, Dylan Howard, the editor of the National Enquirer, texts Keith Davidson, their attorney, this, quote, FYI, Gina trying to hawk Stormy again, referring to Stormy Daniels' manager, Gina Rodriguez. But as Keith Davidson put it, quote, before the Access Hollywood tape, there was very little, if any, interest from what I understand. And Gina was trying to sell the Stormy Daniels Donald Trump story. It wasn't until Access Hollywood that interest sort of reached a crescendo. And you covered politics in this period. It's not hard to see why. That tape, released on October 7th, 2016, kicked off a veritable political firestorm that almost completely engulfed the Trump campaign.
A firestorm is raging in the Republican Party and a growing chorus of Republicans calling on the candidate to get out of the race.
A very rare apology from Donald Trump. The candidate forced to say he's sorry after a tape from 2005 surfaced where he said vulgar comments about women.
Hours away from the blockbuster debate rematch and Donald Trump not backing down. Top Republicans calling on Trump to quit the race. Will the GOP abandon its own nominee?
That's what was in the news. And it went on for hours and days. And it wasn't really a partisan reaction. Democrats and Republicans horrified by what he said. Can grab women in the P word. Quote, when you're famous, they let you do it. Ha, ha, ha. So as Keith Davidson put it in his business negotiations with Dylan Howard in a text, quote, Trump is effed. He testified to the fact that he typed that out. And regarding the allegations made by Stormy Daniels, Dylan Howard texted on October 9th this, quote, her talking and taping blank is the final nail in the coffin. Final nail in the political coffin, right? Slew of allegations from women in the wake of the Access Hollywood tape had Trump on the defensive politically. Here's just some of what he was saying at the time, which was actually entered into evidence in court yesterday.
They're trying to poison the mind of the American voter. Every woman lied when they came forward to hurt my campaign.
If 5% of the people think it's true, and maybe 10% think we don't win.
Every woman lied, even the ones I paid. Those last comments were made on October 14th. Very same day, very same time that Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen, was in intense back and forth negotiating with Keith Davidson over buying and burying and killing Stormy Daniels' story with Trump's money. An email from Davidson to Cohen says this, quote, we spoke on Friday, October 14th, and you said that funds would be wired today. No funds have been received as of sending this email. My client, meaning Stormy Daniels, informs me that she intends to cancel the contract if no funds are received by 5 p.m. Pacific time today. Davidson testified this, quote, and then Cohen said, my guy is in 5 effing states today, or 3 or 4 or 5 different states today. There's nothing I can do. I'm doing everything I can. My guy is, of course, Donald Trump. And Keith Davidson adds that he took it to mean that Cohen did not have permission from his guy, Donald Trump, to pay off his client, Stormy Daniels. The catch and kill scheme to hide damaging information about Trump's relationship with women that happened in the final frantic days of the 2016 campaign, unveiled in front of a jury in a court of law, is where we start today. Here at the table, former U.S. Attorney, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Lemon is back. Bloomberg legal reporter Patricia Hurtado is here. We're so happy to have you here. Welcome. And our wingman for all of these conversations, my friend and colleague, NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, when this is happening and you're reporting this live and you've got your notebook and your photographic memory and we're pulling these moments out, I feel like we were able to travel back in time, but we took the time today, with court not being in session, to string together some of the more comprehensive story that's been told to the jury. And I know you were with Pence. I was covering Trump and doing a lot of these news cycles with our former colleague, Brian Williams. But it's hard to overstate the political crisis that had engulfed the Trump campaign after Access Hollywood.
It was an absolute crisis. I mean, it all came to a stop. Mike Pence literally wouldn't appear on the campaign trail for a moment in time. He did go to a fundraiser, a private fundraiser, but made sure there were no cameras there to see him actually campaigning, because they in real time were considering whether to stick on the ticket or not. There was real conversations with Reince Priebus, who was the RNC chair at the time, about the extent to which Donald Trump could be in the position to remain the nominee. This was, you have John McCain, Condoleezza Rice. Those were the veterans of the Republican Party. Those were the respected voices of the Republican Party who were audibly calling on him to step down. But also Kelly Ayotte, right? The New Hampshire senator who folks thought would have her own presidential prospects someday. And those were the voices that were coming down on him to get out of the race here. At the same time, this is the part of the last month of the campaign that in so many ways, I go back to that moment in time when everybody had brought themselves back up together in that moment. Fast forward 2 weeks when the conversations around the actual transfer, the wire transfer on October 27th began. The headlines had kind of moved off from Access Hollywood and Stormy Daniels at that point. Instead, it was headlines over WikiLeaks,
right,
was still actively releasing emails.
The day after Access Hollywood, Hillary Clinton's campaign, Podesta, gets hacked by the Russians. Right?
Correct. And then that's when, in the weeks that followed, all of a sudden then the controversy became WikiLeaks. And then October 28th, the day that the wire transfer went through, That's the day that James Comey, the FBI director, sent the letter to the Congressional Committee saying that he was reopening the inquiry into Hillary Clinton's emails. If you go back to nightly news, go back to the New York Times from those days, as the Stormy Daniels wire transfer was literally being completed, that could have been the moment that Stormy Daniels became the story. Instead, the focus was on Hillary Clinton and the controversies around her.
It's just an amazing part of the story, and I know you'll both take me to law school on the actual explicit testimony around the technical elements of the crime. But not being a lawyer and having been picked to sit on juries, this really, this reminds me of the work, the meticulous work of the January 6th Select Committee, where they layered Trump insider after Trump insider after Trump insider telling the story that he knew he lost, right? They brought in the campaign pollster, then they brought in the campaign manager, they brought in the data guy. Then they brought, and everyone was testifying to the same thing. In this instance, it feels like what David Pecker told, what Keith Davidson testified to, what the document guy from C-SPAN had to testify to was the legitimacy, the accuracy, the authenticity of those tapes. It's all making clear the motive for burying these stories and creating false business records to do so.
It's really true. In a sense, they're just getting now to the actual crime, which is Stormy Daniels. But the table is set, but it's set impeccably. And we have an existential crisis in the campaign, and anything they do for Stormy Daniels, it's quite clear as to they think maybe the campaign's already effed and lost. So what the prosecution has done so expertly in the 9 days of trial so far is, in a spiraling, reinforcing way, they've brought us to a point where, of course, what happens is to salvage his campaign. There's no other way around it. Even when, and it will happen, they come to attack Michael Cohen for his testimony, there's no counter narrative. There's only one thing that's going on now until he gets characteristically lucky with other news coming up. They've got to save a campaign that is going down for the third time.